Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and you were watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Imperium as we get into the Rogue Trader. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. And if you have any suggestions, please comment down below. But with that said, let's get into 40 Facts of the Rogue Trader. Rogue traders are unique and powerful human individuals who serve as a combination freelance explorer, conquistador, and interstellar merchant for the Imperium of Man. They are hereditary imperial servants and nobles, given a starship, a crew, and in some situations, troops of the Imperial Guard. They are heretically imperial servants and nobles, given a starship, a crew, and troops of the Imperial Guard to use to their full advantage. In some very rare cases, they are given the contingent of Space Marines. Their purpose is to roam those worlds of the galaxy that still lie beyond Imperial control or knowledge. The million or more human-inhabited worlds the Imperium controls are but a tiny fraction of the galactic whole. There are fringes and halo zones, remote areas where the Astronomica does not reach. Most of the Milky Way galaxy remains unexplored, unknown, and extremely dangerous even in the late 41st millennium. The potential of new worlds, alien civilizations, and unimaginable resources made necessary a class of free-ranging Imperial agents known as the Rogue Traders. With a license given to them by the Adept Terra, the Rogue Trader is free to explore the far regions of the galaxy, the area where the Astronomica does not reach, and those areas within its reach as yet unvisited by humanity. Operating in isolation from the central authority of the Imperium, the Rogue Trader must decide how to react to an alien culture, new discoveries, and threats. If he judges an intelligent Xenos race to be potentially dangerous, he may attempt to destroy it, or to gather as much information as he can so that others could do so. If he decides a race may be of use to humanity, he may attempt to make contact and establish relations. If merely rich in technology or minerals, a planet may be plundered. The Rogue Trader will return to Terra laden with treasures of space, alien artifacts, rare and precious minerals, and undreamt of technology. Many Rogue Traders are individuals who have reached a position of power within the Imperium's governing hierarchy. These individuals are drawn from the ranks of the Adeptus Terra, the Imperial Navy, the Imperial Guard, or even the Inquisition. A few are influential civilians, amongst whom the Navigators are the most famous. The Navigators is a very particular form of Imperial-sanctioned human mutant who possesses the Navigator gene. More on them will be discussed in later videos. Rogue Traders have a reputation as outcasts. Many are people whom the high-ranking officials of the Adeptus Terras, higher branches, deem better kept at a safe distance. Rogue Traders will often gather an entourage of hangers-ons and companions, and this may contain alien warriors, mutants, and other undesirables, unacceptable in polite Imperial society. Many in the Inquisition would take to marking the Rogue Traders as heretics. Some Rogue Traders are relatively poor, possessing a single ancient and dilapidated starship. Others are incredibly wealthy and powerful, and have whole fleets of warships and entire private armies at their disposal. Some Rogue Traders operate as mercenaries, renting the service of their ships to the higher bidder, including pirates. Other Rogue Traders are in Imperial organizations like the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Imperial Guard, or the Inquisition. The most valuable possession of a Rogue Trader is his or her Imperial Warrant of Trade, an ancient legal document which describes the sanctions, the accepted limits of a Rogue Trader and his descendants' operations across the galaxy. These charters are hereditary and thus create an entire Rogue Trader dynasty when they are issued. These dynasties are granted a personal coat of arms, identifying their members amongst the Imperial nobility. Rogue Traders usually return to Imperial space every few years, to unload their exotic wares and to resupply, recruit, and rest until the next foray into the darkness of unknown space. During these periods, they may come into conflict with other members of the Adeptus Terra or the Inquisition. Rogue traders wield incredible power, and it is easy for them to forget that once back within the Imperium, they do not have the free rein to act as they wish. This attitude will draw attention from authorities. Many rogue traders dispute the right of the Imperium to exercise authority over them. As men who have wandered among the alien stars and conversed with all manners of cultures, rogue traders are viewed as susceptible to all kinds of heresies, from wayward philosophies to infections by alien creatures or possession by warp entities that live in the darkness between the stars. All of these factors can lead to violent confrontations, particularly if the rogue trader has knowledge or an artifact that the others within the Imperial hierarchy of equal or greater power want. A great many rogue traders have served in the Imperial Navy. This is hardly surprising, as they are expected to command entire armadas of void ships, and few would wish to delegate such responsibilities to subordinates. Many rogue traders are exceptionally skilled captains of their vessels and admirals of their fleets, able, even keen to take on enemies, the likes of which may never have been encountered by the Imperium, and emerge victorious. Many rogue traders who have once served in the Imperial Navy maintain a network of contacts across the sector in which they serve and beyond. As such, they might be able to call upon old friends, perhaps individuals they served beside, or officer cadets. Most rogue traders prefer to get by on their own skills and only call in such favors when things get desperate. Many prefer not to call in the favor from an old contact recently made a Commodore, when the same individual might one day be a High Admiral, and therefore able to provide even greater aid. Rogue traders from a naval background often maintain the trappings of their former ranks, ornamented with all manners of additional finery. Thus, a rogue trader might wear a formal dress coat similar to that worn by a High Admiral, complete with rows of medals and awards. Alongside a treasured Imperial Navy cutlass, he might carry a sword of unknown yet unmistakably Xenos manufacturer, or bear other weapons traded with or stolen from any one of the hundreds of bizarre societies he encounters. The Imperial Guard is another Imperial institution from which rogue traders may be drawn. Those who have risen above service in a single regiment might be granted a warrant of trade to take their crusade beyond the borders of the Imperium space and out into the great unknown. These individuals are not only masters of ground-based combat, but gifted in the art of strategy. Some become great admirals as well as great generals, while others have the foresight to delegate command of their vessels to underlings, concentrating their own skills on bigger strategic pictures. Rogue traders from such backgrounds often amass huge ground forces and use their fleet to bring these to bear in devastating planetary assaults. Beyond the reach of the Imperium, such individuals may be forced to husband their forces in a manner they may not be used to, lest they exhaust their finite resources with little or no hope of recruitment. Should the ground forces suffer high losses, the rogue trader will be forced to recruit from those worlds he has conquered. In the case of human societies, rediscovered after generations of isolation from the broader galaxy, he may establish a system of feudal duty, whereby the planet is required to send its warriors to serve in his fleet, or serve in his armies. Some rogue traders have even resorted to recruiting the services of alien mercenaries or auxiliaries, a practice highly frowned upon by the authorities of the Imperium. Out beyond the fringes, however, rogue traders are a power entirely unto themselves. In appearance, these militant rogue traders may vary hugely. Many wear the trappings of a regiment from which they were originally drawn from, which, unlike the formalized uniforms of the Imperial Navy, is often specific to the culture of the regimental homeworld. They may also wear elements of the uniforms of the Imperial General Staff, including a long, elaborate coat or peak cap. The many who prefer to lead their conquests from the front lines mix such dress in a manner more appropriate to their warrior background, combining a dress uniform with carapaces, armor, or even power armor modified to fit a normal-sized human. While the weapons carried by a rogue trader of an Imperial Navy background might be considered for show, those carried by one from an Imperial Guard background are generally more practical and far more devastating. These weapons could have been handcrafted for them and covered in elegant engravings, or was recovered from the body of a defeated foe and kept not only as a trophy, but valued for some unique destructive capabilities it possesses. Within the Imperium of Man, there are those who sit at the pinnacle of power, the nobility and the ruling elite. As the Imperium is structured as a feudal society, it stands to reason that within it exist many types of noble houses, including planetary rulers, military lords, and rogue traders. Over time, once the warrant of trade has been given, a rogue trader may find that his empire is growing. The dynasty now has fleets of starships, planetary fiefdoms, and thousands of house soldiers to call upon. As time goes on, and a family continues to grow, it develops into a rogue trader dynasty, able to command scores of voidcraft and countless troops. This legacy spans the Imperium and beyond. To ensure that this legacy continues, the lords and ladies of the dynasty designate an heir apparent in whatever fashion is deemed appropriate by their customs. These sons and daughters may find themselves struggling for the favor of their dynasty's leader, in an effort to be worthy of succession. Oftentimes, in noble families, the second, third, and even fourth child find themselves with little option but to go out and make a name for themselves, or simply languish in obscurity, hoping that circumstances arise to change their fate. However, this is not the case in rogue trader families, where all are expected to work and prove themselves. It is oftentimes that these noble scions end up plotting and scheming for ways to maneuver into a position where the family leader has little choice but to name him heir. The children of the rogue trader houses are instructed in all manners of subject mundane and esoteric. They are assigned the best tutors and mentors the clan can afford, and by the time the child enters adolescence, they are capable enough to be sent out into the wider galaxy, typically with a bodyguard entourage in tow. They have been afforded every advantage, as the future of their houses rests upon their shoulders. Not every heir apparent turns out to be the best choice for the family. Some are lazy, shiftless souls who do nothing more than squander the family's fortune and pass their days in decadence and perversion. In such cases, the leaders of these dynasties often select more than one heir to the throne. It is a gamble they make to ensure that at least one of them survives to continue the dynasty. Rogue trader heirs are often assigned one of the family's void ships under the command of one of their most capable captains, or a family scion that has more days behind him than ahead. They are then given an allowance and sent to learn about the unforgiving galaxy. If along the way they make gains for the house, so much the better. Some return upon their majority to assume the title that they have been ordained for. Others are never seen from or heard from again. Oftentimes, a rival family member covets the throne of the house at the expense of all else. They scheme the downfall of their siblings and relatives. They may arrange an accident to befell other heirs so that they alone remain to assume the family's leadership. Thus, many heirs, especially from the larger dynasties, are taught to be wary and look out for such plots. Many surround themselves with capable allies and protectors, but in the end, survival often comes down to their own wits and instincts. Many learn not only the intricacies of political longevity, but martial arts and other forms of combat as well. This is by far the best means to ensure they live long enough to return home and assume the privilege and rank that they have been groomed for all their lives. A rogue trader and his team are more than merely a ship captain and his crew. Today's rogue traders are the descendants of the first rogue traders and the many that have come after. All of those that serve in the rogue trader's crew, not just the rogue trader, will be part of this dynasty. This legacy is important for the crew members to remember, as they need to know that they are more than ordinary imperial citizens. They are rare individuals chosen for greatness who possess power to shape the very destiny of the Imperium itself. It is also a source of great pride for those members of the rogue trader's crew to know that they are a cut above all average citizens, gifted with special rights and blessed with a favored role in the Emperor's grand design. Part of the status that the crew members share also means that to a degree they are all equally important. Though ultimately the rogue trader controls the ship and the main decisions that affect the entirety of the ship and its course into the void, it is his crew that are equally essential in playing a role in the destiny of the rogue trader's dynasty. Because of this, many rogue traders have significant resources of their own to call upon, but they usually stick with a crew and flagship, often a cruiser, they are given. Every vessel in the Imperium's registry is a precious asset, and capital ships are not squandered, for they take decades, even entire centuries to construct in the Mechanicum's shipyards, and can tie up the equivalent of many years' worth of planetary industrial output. Nonetheless, the appointment of a rogue trader is an event of great importance, and the Imperial authorities would not, or not often anyways, wish a new recipient of the warrant to fall to pirate attacks the instant he or she sets out. The Imperium expects great things from its rogue traders, and will often make every effort to ensure that they are equipped for the dangerous mission they will face. Along a flagship, a rogue trader may be accompanied by frigates and other escorts, as well as a multitude of cargo vessels, tenders, processions, and refining vessels, and many more auxiliaries. If the rogue trader is not already versed in the skills needed to command a fleet and has not appointed a servant who is, then the authorities will find one qualified to handle the day-to-day runnings of the flotilla. Most rogue traders are the sort of people who want to take total personal command of their fleets, and will soon learn the skills needed to do so. Those who do not tend not to live very long in the perilous regions of the galaxy, beyond the fringes of Imperial rule. Other significant assets gifted to the rogue traders may include ground troops. Entire Imperial Guard regiments may be second to them, along with all the auxiliary support units needed to maintain them and advisors to aid in their use and deployment. Though such gifts are considered temporary attachments, in reality it is likely to prove permanent. Rogue traders are expected to meet any threat that waits in the dark, and the Imperial Guard is often at the sharp end of such conflicts, and so unlikely to be returned to service elsewhere, even if the soldier survives such service. Some rogue traders issue their own troop uniforms of their own design. In addition to military forces, a rogue trader may be provided with a vast army of bureaucrats, administrators, clerks, artisans, and advisors drawn from the ranks of the administratum. These are intended to serve the needs of the administrating of any worlds conquered in the course of the fleet's travel. Plenty of rogue trader fleets are furthermore accompanied by entire populations of colonists, volunteers or otherwise, who will settle newly discovered worlds so that the Imperium's borders are expanded from one generation to the next. In some cases, the rogue traders will install relatives or trusted followers as a new ruling class, ensuring the new colony owes fealty to him as well as to the Imperium. There has been many famous rogue traders in the history of the Imperium that accomplish great things, but to fully understand the possible influence of the rogue traders, we must get to know the rogue traders from the past. The rogue trader Madame Charlebel is the daughter of the infamous Lord Captain Armelin, whose fortunes were dashed when an orc invasion overwhelmed his clan's home system of Adrani Spinward. Armelin threw himself and the fortunes of his house into the war effort, knowing that if he did not, the bulk of his interest would be lost and centuries of tradition and honor defiled. Armelin committed his entire fleet to the effort, rushing an endless stream of reinforcements and material to the defense. Unfortunately, Armelin's actions were as rash as honorable, and all except a handful of his vessels were destroyed as the orc fleet crushed the system's defenses. House of Armelin was left with a single warp-capable transport, the Grace of Sofa, and a dozen or so inter-system vessels. The clan's fortunes crumbled, and Armelin was forced to divest himself of what resources remained outside of the Adrani Spinward. His health and sanity failed him. Armelin retreated to his last sanctity, where he quietly sunk into a drug-fueled fantasy world. The only hope of House Armelin lies with the last remaining scion, Madame Charlebel. A striking and determined woman, Charlebel seeks to maintain the deception that her clan is still strong. She does this by projecting a thoroughly convincing illusion of wealth and sophistication. However, her resources are now running dangerously low. In appearance, Madame Charlebel is very sophisticated. She is well versed in proper manners and traditions, yet she is no willowy daughter of privilege despite appearance, and long ago learned how to get things done for herself. To this end, she has mastered, somewhat unusually for one of her station, the deadly Eldar weapon known as the Harlequin's Kiss. Many a rival have fallen to his deadly touch, after underestimating the wielder. Striking out on her own aboard the Grace of Sofa, Madame Charlebel has come to the Cornish Expanse to seek some remedy to the dire straits of her house. Unable to draw upon the resources of other rogue traders, she has employed the service of a large band of cruel mercenaries to aid her in whatever travails her. Amati is the 12th person to hold the warrant of trade for the House Amati, which was issued less than a century ago. The house has holdings in the Scitali sector and has made iron roads on several worlds of the Cornish Expanse. However, the rogue traders have had an astronomical mortality rate, and almost all have died under improbable circumstances. After holding the warrant for 6 years, Amati became the most experienced rogue trader in his house for 25 years. A committed expansionist of the Imperium, in his brief time as a warrant holder, Nash has focused his house's efforts on establishing human colonies within the Expanse. All 3 of the colonies he has sponsors were on worlds occupied by Xenos. In each case, he has deliberately conducted genocides to cleanse the planet of Xenos taint prior to bringing the colonists. Rogue trader Amati is enthusiastic about an opportunity to kill heretics and Xenos. The ability to successfully wage war is crucial to the survival of a rogue trader, as surely as his skills in business, diplomacy, and voidfaring. It is the strong arm and the implicit threat of violence that lends weight to the man's word in the Imperium. A rogue trader's martial prowess is often the only measure by which others judge him. Knowing this, a wise rogue trader studies war with the same fever as he studies markets and currencies. He knows the value of war to the nearest throne, understanding that the true cost of war is reflected in more than the banking ledgers and casualty lists. A rogue trader must be able to weigh every factor in war, from costs and benefits to the social and political ramifications. This is what sets a rogue trader apart from a common, charismatic captain. He has the ability to raise an army and a fleet of ships to carry it, and the legal, moral, and ethical backings of the administratum that allows him to use them as he sees fit. This makes him unique among his peers. Warfare is an intrinsic dance, full of ever-shifting alliances and uncertain futures, and is not to be entered into lightly. When committed, a rogue trader must pursue it with all of its strength, courage, and violence that he can muster. While the benefits of waging war can truly be staggering, and may make a man a king, the cost of failure is always death, whether true death or the mirage of little deaths like humiliation, loss of power, loss of wealth, or even enslavement. These are all important issues to keep in mind when approaching war, though they are by no means the only ones, and it is a fool who disregards their importance. Wars of conquest are military endeavors, whereby the attacker seeks to subjugate an enemy through sheer force of arms. They are waged mainly to acquire some sort of prize, typically land and natural resources, but oftentimes also slaves or some other form of wealth held by the defenders. Since the goal is the occupation of enemy land, the subjugation of its people, and the exploitation of resources, wars of conquest are infinitely complex. They require better planning, larger and long-term commitments, and perhaps more finesse than wholesale slaughter. They also have a permanency about them, for once an invading force enters a land for conquest, they are typically there to stay. Rogue traders rarely take part in wars of conquest, at least not as a conqueror. Wars of this type tend to tie a man down to a single place and make him responsible for a whole lot of ground-based activities like reconstruction, defense, and subjugation. As this is the exact opposite to many free-wielding rogue traders who typically prefer the bridge of a void ship to the halls of government, they tend to take support roles in other people's wars of conquest, supplying weapons and material, providing monetary or temporary military backing in the form of void ships and house troops, establishing logistical chains, and smuggling have made many a fortune during a larger conflict. By far, the single most common reason to wage war throughout the Imperium of Man is a war of faith. The religious war is perhaps also the easiest to justify. The opening salvo of many a bloody campaigns have come on the tail of the phrase, "The God Emperor wills it." It could be said that the justification for all wars the Imperium embarks on are at their heart fueled by zealous piety, or at least draped in its trappings. These are just wars, wars based on ecclesiarchal doctrines whose atrocities and crimes are justified, even called for, by the God Emperor himself. The reason behind them rarely matters, even to the generals and admirals commanding the vast imperial military forces. For them, it is enough that the God Emperor wills it, and so it shall be done. Due to the nature of the imperial creed, wars of faith may be waged against any who oppose the rightful rule of the Imperium of man, be they alien, heretic, or rebel. However, the Imperium reserves a special hatred for one foe, the forces of the ruinous powers. These wars can be faster and more intense than any other war, although this is by no means a guarantee, since their goal is simply destruction more than conquest. They usually end when the aggressor has either wiped out the heathens and heretics, converted them, or taught them a sufficiently hard lesson. Afterwards, the aggressors will leave behind some religious official and missionaries to see that their work stuck and that their new converts remain on the narrow path. Garrisons of troops may be left behind as well to keep peace and enforce new doctrines, but the majority of the invading forces will be withdrawn to their bases, leaving the rest of the work to the priests and adepts. Due to their relative quickness, high potential for gain, and the ease by which a person can get an enemy labeled as a heretic in the Imperium, religious wars are quite popular among rogue traders. Whether based on true religious fervor or simply used as a convenient excuse, many rogue traders have waged wars with conspicuous displays of prayer and breastbeating. Unlike wars of conquest, in which they tend to take a secondary role, rogue traders often take a very active and enthusiastic role in religious wars. What better way is there to prove your devotion than by killing the enemies of the God Emperor? Indeed, many warrants of trade specifically call for the wielder to make wars amongst the heretics and bring his holy light to the godless heathens at the furthest reach of space. When attacked, a rogue trader embarks on a defensive war. Of course, many warmongers would have it believe that their wars are defensive wars. They justify their aggression by real or imagined threats, but their wars are predicated on the desire for wealth, land, and power. A true defensive war is fought to deny the enemy territory or resources, and often there is little reward except the preservation of what one already had. The ongoing defense of the Cadian Gate in the Cadian sector against the Black Crusades of Chaos was one example of a defensive war, as is the recent war fought on the world of Damaris against the Orc invaders. While those fighting defensive wars are typically caught flat-footed in the early stages of the conflict, they will have certain advantages over their attackers, due to fighting on familiar grounds, being closer to supply lines, and even the knowledge that they must win or perish. Due to the smaller potential profits of a defensive war, it is not something rogue traders get involved in. However, the potential reward in both finances and reputation for coming to the aid of an embattled people should never be overlooked. The reputation of the Esme Corda changed from a pirate and blackguard to the hero of the Imperium almost overnight, after the rogue trader participated in the destruction of the Space Hulk Cauldron of Savagery in the year 675 of the 40th millennium. More sinister rogue traders embark in wars of distraction. What better way to cover illicit activities and shady dealings than with a bloody armed conflict? As heinous as it may sound to some, inciting wars for the purpose of misdirection can be a perfectly legitimate, if perhaps slightly underhanded, business practice. A war pursued by ways of distraction is often fought by proxy. Thanks to their usual business dealings, rogue traders often have a ready supply of mercenaries and hired thugs that they can call upon for such an occasion. Sometimes a rogue trader must wage a war, but cannot be seen to have done so. When a rogue trader needs some dirty work done, but it is either inconvenient or impolitical to get dirt on his own hands, there are plenty of private military organizations in imperial space more than willing to do it for him, including other rogue traders. War of proxy is a war fought on behalf of one party, typically unknown to an actual combatant and hired through numerous cutouts and front organizations by professional mercenaries or other agents. While it can be a clean and expedient way to wage war, the risk of doing so should not be underestimated. Without direct control of events, such wars have a way of spiraling out of control, possibly hampering the very goal they were supposed to obtain. Sometimes it is more profitable to supply a war than it is to fight it. War profiteering is as old as the act of war itself, and much like war, is both praised and detested. War profiteers are individuals or groups who make their profit by selling important material to belligerents in an armed conflict, and can range from a guardsman selling a lasgun of a dead comrade to a huge manufactorum. Although war profiteering is typically thought of as the selling of weapons, fighting vehicles, and other war equipment, the need for any valuable commodities can be exploited for profit in times of war. Medical supplies, foodstuffs, and raw materials all tend to be in high demand in a war zone. It is not unheard of for a canny war profiteer to sell his wares to both sides of the conflict. There have even been cases of war profiteers instigating armed conflicts for the sole purpose of supplying arms and resources to the belligerents involved. Rogue traders are adepts at war profiteering. They are well placed to buy commodities for low, shipping them to willing war zones and sell them for a tidy profit to all comers. In fact, the business of making war a business is many a rogue trader's dynasty's core dealings. Xenocide, similar in theory to its cousin genocide, is the act of waging war for the sole purpose of completely eradicating an intelligent alien species. To the Imperium, xenocide is accepted and even advocated as a religious imperative of humanity, and is yet another common mandate dictated to a rogue trader by their warrants of trade. While not all rogue traders are compelled to pursue campaigns of xenocide in their warrants, nearly all are expected to assist Imperial forces in campaigns against Xenos. While all rogue traders tactically agree to this upon their warrants, in practice it is a different matter altogether. Away from the watchful eye of the Imperium, many a pragmatic rogue trader have turned their backs on human settlements besieged by Xenos when the cost of assisting outweighs the benefit of leaving their fellow humans to their fate. A rogue trader renowned for utilizing these methods to wage war is Caligos Winterscale. He comes from a storyline of powerful rogue traders that have waged wars, conquered planets, and written their name across the Cornish expanse. The friends and resources of House Winterscale are legion, but so are its foes. For if there is one thing a Winterscale loves more than profit, it is a worthy opponent. Ever since Purity Lethemion charted safe passage through the Maw and the stars beyond, opening the exploration of the Cornish expanse, there have been Winterscales in the expanse. Centuries later, Caligos Winterscale is the latest of his dynasty to inherit the now famous Winterscale warrant of trade. In the years since his ancestors, Sebastian Winterscale, the power of Winterscale has only expanded, and Caligos Winterscale has proven unwilling to rest on his family's laurels. In the last half-century, he has proven himself as capable as his ancestor, Sebastian, and now the name Caligos Winterscale is spoken with fear and awe throughout the expanse. And those were 40 facts on the rogue trader. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends on Facebook, Reddit, whatever social media you guys use. And thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can create videos. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This is Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first.